now. It's the right thing to do to start pulling troops out of Afghanistan because we've involved ourselves in a war there with people we never should have been fighting. Americans hear the word Taliban, and in their minds they think terrorist. I'm not sure most Americans understand. Actually, I'm pretty sure most Americans don't understand the relationship of the Taliban to Afghan history and, ever since the king left in the 1970s, how up in the air that nation's politics and violence connected to politics has been. I mean, the reason everybody was so pessimistic, all those people that said, oh, Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires, when we went in there is because everyone who knows about their history knows that you're not going to walk in there and impose some sort of a stable government on that place. The only people that are going to do that are the people there. That's where the Taliban comes in. The Taliban is a fundamental, militaristic, from our vantage point here in the West, rather nasty, indigenous movement. Supported by a lot of the predominant ethnic group in that area. Pashtuns, Pathans, you hear it a lot of ways. And this group of people is a tribally based people. They do not recognize things like borders between Afghanistan and the provinces that border Afghanistan that are nominally in Pakistan. They go, wherever they want to. And there's millions upon millions of them. And we somehow, in our quest for Osama bin Laden, got into a war with them. Mainly because when we asked them to hand over Osama bin Laden, they said no. That's not a war we can win with any sort of the commitment level we have now. There's a very good argument you could make that there's no way to win that war, given the terrain, the culture, the formidable challenges. I mean, that's a long way away, folks. This is a logistical nightmare, and it costs a fortune. Cost needs to be factored into this. So when President Obama says we're going to start drawing down the troop commitment, you sit there and go, well, there's a good rational decision. John McCain notwithstanding. And as far as the Drudge headline that somehow he was going against his generals on this, listen, the best thing the president could do in all these counterinsurgency wars is not listen to the generals at all. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the part of the issue that the media never seems to bring up, which is so obvious and so in front of all of our faces, is that generals have never said, go home and give up the war, or the war is lost, or this is a bad deal to continue fighting. We've said before on this show, the quickest way for an active duty general to lose his job is to say that the job he's tasked with is undoable. Because the first thing you think to your head is, well, then I'll go find a guy who doesn't feel that way. You're never going to succeed. You don't even think it's doable. I'll get a guy who does. So when the president goes and says to the generals, do you think we should get out of this? Or, is there any way we're going to prevail here? And the generals go, absolutely, there's a way we're going to prevail. I'm not a loser. The whole thing is so counterintuitive. The military brass would still have us in Vietnam if it were up to them. They never would have stopped the war in Korea where it did. The whole idea of MacArthur, one of the great generals in American history, may be overrated, get into a constitutional brawl with Harry Truman, the president who got us into Korea, over how far they should go to fight the war. And Harry Truman was saying, well, listen, I don't want World War III. And General MacArthur was saying something to the effect of, you're a wimp if you don't let me nuke these sanctuaries over the Chinese border. The generals never want to go easy, light, or get out. It runs counter to their character, runs counter to the military culture. It runs counter to how these guys get these jobs to begin with. They're can-do people. Saying that they can't goes against the grain. Go find me active duty generals in any post-World War II, even in World War II, role that advocated retreat or disengagement or anything like that. So the only way you're ever going to get out of wars in this country, given the history, is to not listen to the generals. And it ain't their job to give political advice anyway. That's what got MacArthur fired, when President Truman had to overrule him. So in this case, President Obama is doing the right thing because there's an upcoming election and he's not listening to his generals, and that's the only way he's going to get troops out of Afghanistan in any significant numbers. Here's the problem with that, though. This is a political move. There's no problem with that. Sometimes politicians in this country only do the right thing when there's an election coming up and they feel the pressure to do it. But there's two kinds of political moves. There's the kind of political move you make for political reasons, but that really means something. You're going to do something concrete. You wouldn't have done it if you didn't have to, but you have to, so you do. This is doing something that's not concrete because political realities are going to make it really hard on you if you don't at least look like you're doing this. Let me explain what I mean. Folks, you can get different estimates of how many troops are in Afghanistan. The reason why is for the same reason the situation in Iraq is hard to get an actual number on. It's because in addition to soldiers, there are all sorts of people that, let's be honest, are mercenaries fighting for security companies and everything else. And not just fighting for, but providing security, doing a lot of things that if they weren't doing it, or if this was 1950, we'd be using our soldiers for. So we can do a 200,000-man troop commitment with 100,000 actual U.S. soldiers. So I'll just give you one of the oft-stated numbers. One of the oft-stated numbers is that we have about 100,000 soldiers in Afghanistan right now. That's just the U.S. commitment. That's the vast majority, but that's the U.S. part. Now, of that 100,000, about 30,000 of those people were part of the surge. You remember when there was a big deal made over the surge, and wasn't it Petraeus, Ben, who was saying, General Petraeus, we need to do this surge just like we did in Iraq, and you get in there and it'll be a temporary 6-month kind of thing, and we'll blast them out and, make huge progress. Well, been a lot longer than the original time estimates. I don't know if it was 6 months, but a lot longer than the original time estimates. And those 30,000 temporary troops are still there. President Obama is promising to draw down 10,000 of those guys. 10,000 of the surge that should have been brought back a long time ago, leaving 20,000 of the surge for whom, it's not a surge really anymore, is it? That's just increased troop levels. Spokesmen for the Obama administration say another 23,000 more should be out by the end of next summer, which would be, you guessed it, 3 months, 2 months, a month and a half, really, before the next presidential election. So this is a political move, but sometimes political moves, actually get you something good. In this case, though, what the president is doing by lessening our commitment in Afghanistan is simply demobilizing the surge, which was supposed to be, pulled back long before now. Of course, it's not being framed that way. It's being framed like this is the beginning now of needing to concentrate our, resources in this country here at home. The president is saying we need to pull back. America needs, our efforts here, blah, 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 blah. So by pulling back the surge, we're doing that? No, we're not. Which brings us, by the way, to the second story that kind of is involved in this that I wanted to bring to your attention. The Obama administration's rationale on Libya, which is why you can't believe what the president is saying about we need to, these military endeavors are draining us, blah, blah, blah. Well, when are we getting out of Libya? Now, I'm still taking flack from people who think that what's going on in Libya is what I asked for. No, I said if Muammar Gaddafi goes door to door and starts executing tens of thousands of his people for retribution after he retakes their towns, we should be prepared to create a safe zone and allow a port so that we could evacuate people, as was done, by the way, in 1922 with American warships off the coast of Turkey during our period, by the way, that people look back on now and call isolationist. Now, might my scenario have eventually expanded into what there is now? Yeah, if the safe zone had been attacked, you'd have a war going on. You wouldn't have what we have now. You'd have American, tanks in there, and this whole thing would already be over. Now, do I favor anything like that? No, I'm just put in the position, as many of us are, of trying to avert holocausts, and what's the role of the rest of the world in doing that? Now, it does not involve putting drones up in the sky and shooting missiles at people.